Hi everyone, and welcome to the Torah Exchange. This week's Parsha, Parshas Maase, opens by telling us about Bnei Israel's journey in the desert, from Mitzrayim all the way till now, till right before they enter Eretz Yisrael. Except the opening words of the Parsha are El Maase Bnei Israel. Here are the journeys of Bnei Israel, and then it goes on to list 42 different places. But hold on, Maase, they were in the desert for 40 years from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael. Isn't that just one big journey? Why is the Torah talking about it in this plural sense? And not only does the Torah talk about the journey in a plural sense more than once by saying Maase or Masatam instead of their Masa, their journey, but the Torah also says for each place that they went from place 1 to place 2. And then it says they went from place 2 to place 3 and from place 3 to place 4, clearly showing that each time they moved from place to place, it was viewed as its own discrete journey, as opposed to saying they went from place 1 to place 2 to place 3, etc., and so on and so on. So why divide it up into a whole bunch of small journeys? Why not just refer to it as one big journey? Why did the Torah break it up like this? Well, 3 reasons come to mind. 1, maybe it's divided up so that it's less daunting. Maybe as they were traveling, this was how Bnei Israel viewed their trip. They viewed it as 42 shorter journeys, 42 attainable goals to reach, rather than one massive journey that might seem like a never-ending, unattainable goal. Dividing up the trip like this might have helped them to not lose their morale, to keep on going. 2, another reason, maybe it's divided up to emphasize to Bnei Israel now, at the end of their journey, that they should look at everything that happened. They're supposed to take this trip down memory lane because they're supposed to look and realize it's not just about the end goal, but the journey itself. Look at everything you've accomplished. You've accomplished 42 journeys, not just one. That's huge. Or 3, maybe the Torah divided up the journey into 42 smaller journeys to emphasize to Bnei Israel that they needed to go through each of those steps. These weren't just 42 places they happened to pass through, but these are 42 distinct journeys that they needed to go on in order to complete their larger journey of going from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael. As we mentioned earlier, it says they went from place 1 to place 2, and then from place 2 they went to place 3, and from place 3 to place 4. Vayisu miramses veichanu besukot, vayisu mesukot veichanu beitam, and so on and so on. The Torah is listing each place twice because, as we said, they didn't just go from point A to point B to point C to point D, etc. They went to point A and they stayed in point A. They took something, a lesson, a message from point A. They grew from point A. And then they took that with them, and then they moved on to point B. And again, they stayed at point B. They took something from point B. They took something away from each place where they stayed, and they brought it with them to the next place that they stayed. Each leg of the trip wasn't just a physical advancement in their journey, but it was also an emotional advancement. Each place they got to brought them one step closer, both physically and emotionally, at arriving in Eretz Yisrael. They needed each step to be mentally and emotionally ready to reach their final destination. True, their 40 years in the desert may have seemed like an unnecessary detour because of the Chayim Meraglim, like it's just a punishment, they don't actually need these 40 years, they could have gotten there in a much quicker time. Possibly, but Parshas Maase comes to remind the people that their journey wasn't prolonged unnecessarily. They should look back and reflect on how their journey made them that much more ready to reach their final destination. Now, right now, for a lot of us, COVID feels like that unnecessary roadblock. It's putting people's lives on hold in different ways. Lockdown, social distancing, sickness, travel restrictions, it's putting off simchas. It's crazy. It's really putting people's lives on hold, and it's making people's journeys that much longer, whatever that journey may be, whether that's starting a family or starting a new job or starting school or getting a degree or whatever other plans people had that all of a sudden needed to take a pause for now. But maybe this is a reminder that this stage that we're in isn't a detour. Maybe this is a built-in part of the journey that we need that's going to force us to stop and reflect so that will be that much more ready to attain that goal, whatever that goal is, when the time comes for us to attain it. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a great Shabbos.